Chapter 21. Promises Made. A few miles away from the house, Brett pulled over and went under the dashboard to find the GPS tracker FBI vehicle had installed. He unplugged the module and tossed it into a ditch. Then, at Abby's direction, they turned off of Highway 160 onto a gravel road that twisted its way east into the mountains. It was nothing more than a service road used for fighting forest fires. It carved its way around until eventually it met up with Highway 160 again, but bypassed going back through town. If they had stayed on their initial course, they would have crossed south into New Mexico headed the wrong direction. If they had taken a left from the house and went back through town, well, there was a good chance they would have been caught. The forensics techs would be free as soon as their co-workers got back to the house, and the entire state would soon be looking for them. Taking the 30-minute route through the mountains was the only way to get pointed back towards Denver without the risk of going back through town, and still be able to pull everything off in time. In the back seat, Abby was fully engaged with her laptop, clicking and tapping her way through her part of the plan. A great deal depended on her involvement in this whole process, DJ knew. He glanced back at her to check her progress. Her fingers were flying over the surface of the keyboard and trackpad. He could see her hazel eyes dancing back and forth as she studiously worked away to fulfill her part in all of this. Her hazel eyes. They weren't a heart-stopping green, but they were still just as captivating. He shook his head. "Keep your mind on your work, DJ," he silently scolded himself. Before they had gone too far, Brett's phone buzzed. He reported that it was his boss. Then he took a deep breath and answered. The conversation was long and at times a bit heated, but Brett plowed forward anyway, laying out his case of why things needed to proceed the way Brett was presenting it to him. His boss could in no way be included in this crazy plan, lest his career be ruined, and Brett pointed that out to him as well. In the end, his boss agreed that there was really no other way, that if it were his wife's life hanging in the balance, he would probably do the same thing. His boss promised to make the arrangements with a couple of people he could trust to keep their mouths closed and do what needed to be done to help Brett out. He hung up with his boss and just drove silently for a while. DJ could tell he was worried. All the experience and training the FBI had poured into him to act to save someone's life was what he was conditioned for, but when it was your spouse that was depending on you to get everything right, well, DJ reasoned the weight of this situation was probably pretty tough to carry. A few minutes after hanging up with his boss, Brett's phone buzzed again, and a text message lit up the screen. It simply said, "Done," and contained 3 phone numbers with names next to each. Brett nodded to DJ, then continued to drive. From the back seat, Abby spoke up without looking away from her laptop. "We need supplies," she said. 3 prepaid cell phones with headphone jacks. Does anybody have any cash?" Brett had close to $40. Miss Jackson had almost $60. DJ didn't even have a wallet, and Abby wondered out loud why anyone even used cash anymore. But it wasn't enough. They would need more. "Wait a minute," Brett said. Back at the house, he had grabbed the agent's wallet when he frisked the man's body. Brett had tossed it into the glove box and forgot about it. Checking it revealed only a few dollars. But he had credit cards. Chances are those cards had not been deactivated yet. It was worth a shot, they decided. They stopped off at Ponca Springs at a big box department store and found what they needed. The dead agent's card still worked, so while they were at it, they picked up some fast food and topped off the tank in the Tahoe. Since the guy had tried to kill them all, they had no problems letting him pay for everything. Across the street was a large sporting goods store focused on hunters, shooters, and the like. DJ insisted on picking up a few items from there as well to help with the assault they had planned. He knew exactly what he wanted and was in and out quickly. From Ponca Springs, they finished the trip into Denver. Somewhere along the way, Abby announced she was done and needed a Wi-Fi connection. As soon as they got into the outskirts of town, they picked a fast food chain that provided it free to their customers. She sat in the car, connected, and uploaded the app update to the online server she had located as its home. "How long will this take?" asked DJ after a minute or two. "It's already done," she replied, and closed the lid. "What happens now is it will push the update to all of the phones that have the app. As long as they're connected to a cell phone network or Wi-Fi, they should all be updated pretty quick. Within 30 minutes, we'll know where every single one of Big Chuck's high-level people are, including Big Chuck himself. Now check your burner phones. You'll see a text message containing 2 links. Click the first one and it will download my app. It's basically a hack for a popular open-source map program, but it'll give you real-time locations of every single phone. You'll see each location as a little thumbtack. Tap the thumbtack, and it'll show you a name. If they're moving, like they're in a car or something, well then the thumbtack will move also. The second link downloads the app they use to communicate with so you can call anyone on their network. They did as instructed. And by the time they got their app installed, it was already starting to reveal thumbtacks on the scalable map. As DJ watched, more and more thumbtacks began to appear. He clicked around the map, looking for the ones he was most interested in finding. In a minute, he found Big Chuck. Zooming in revealed he was currently in a large industrial area along the South Platte River. Brett called out from the driver's seat, "I got him." He held out his phone to DJ to see what he had found. He was smiling at DJ, but it wasn't your typical happy person smile. The fire that sparkled in Brett's eyes spoke of an emotion far darker than childlike happiness. "Okay, Abby," DJ looked at her. "This is where we let you two off. Once we're in position, I'll give you a call. You can do your little hacking thing to help us buy the time we need. When we're done and clear, call in the cavalry." One of the phone numbers Brett's boss provided was to the lead agent that should already be on the ground in Colorado. They were an advance team from Dallas, so there was little chance of corruption by Big Chuck. Brett's boss had given him instructions to be looking for a call and told him what they were to do when they got it. When Abby and Mary reached out, that team was to come and rescue and guard them until it was all over. The agents from Dallas would keep them a secret from any Colorado-based agents as well. Abby nodded, but she didn't move. She just looked down at her closed laptop. "What's wrong?" DJ asked. After a long moment, she finally spoke. "DJ, can I talk to you privately for a minute?" Sure," he said. A lump suddenly appeared in his throat, and his heart began to pound so hard he felt a beating in his ears. Abby looked at her mother. "Give me just a second, Mom." She stepped out of the SUV, and DJ followed suit. He met her at the back of the vehicle, and she quietly began to talk. "Look, you and I both know you may not come back from this. Neither one of you might walk away from this for that matter. There's just so many things that can go wrong." She looked down at her feet and seemed unsure of how to proceed. DJ didn't think. He just reached out and took both her hands into his own. She looked up at him, surprised. "Hey, this is going to work," he said. "They aren't expecting what's about to happen. I promise, Brett and I are both going to be fine." His heart was racing, and he wanted nothing more than to just bend down and kiss her, but he couldn't bring himself to it. He still missed his wife terribly, and if he followed through with that kiss, it would feel like he was cheating on her. There was no doubt his feelings were real, but he would have to push them away for now. Maybe, if he survived the next few hours, he could work this out in his head later. She looked up at him and cocked her head. "I've been thinking," she said. He noticed she did not pull her hands away. "When this is over, chances are you're going to jail, or at least they're going to try real hard to put you there." "Hey," he said, "I have a boatload of money. I'll buy the best lawyers money can buy," he assured her. "Well," she trailed off. "Well, what?" "I have another idea." She began to explain a plan to him, one he initially rejected, but as she continued to talk, he warmed up to the idea. "Are you sure you can do that?" he said. "It sounds really complicated." "Well, I certainly don't know how to do it all, but let's just say I'm connected with those who do." He nodded his head. "Well, I'll tell you what. I'll think about it hard. There'll be a time to work that out afterwards anyway." He finally, and with remorse, released her hands and checked his watch. It was almost 10:30. They had an hour and a half to complete the next phase and save 3 people's lives. Abby grabbed her laptop out of the back seat, and Miss Jackson unloaded herself from the SUV. Mary gave both the men a good hug. She then spoke to the both of them. "Now, you two listen to me for a minute. The world has changed since I've been alive. We Americans go to war differently than we used to. And make no bones about it. That's what you two are going to have to do. Go to war. Nowadays, when good people are required to do bad things in order to save the lives of others, they tend to try to restrain themselves. Now, I'm talking more to you, Agent Foster, than I am to DJ. I think he gets this more than you. But the both of you listen to me real close. Good people, like yourselves, try to keep from crossing some imaginary boundary to keep their morality in place. But back in my parents' days, when they had to fight their way across Europe to stop Hitler, there was no boundaries. My dad told me stories of what real war looked like and what you had to do to win it, because if you didn't, the other side would. Now, as you two men go out to save the lives of the people you love, you need to understand that as well. The people you're going against have no boundaries. They face no moral dilemmas. They'll do what they need to in order to win. They already have. You've seen that. That's why we're all standing here right now. Now, somewhere along the way, if you don't get yourselves killed first, you're going to press up against that boundary. Your own sense of morality is going to tell you to restrain yourself, to not cross it. That if you do so, well, you'll become like the monsters you're fighting against, that you need to be better than that. But I'm telling you that crossing that line does not make you like them. You two are good men. I see it. And so does Abigail. So, you just go ahead and take one big giant step across that line when the time comes. You do what needs to be done so that the job is finished. For good. Because if you don't, it'll never be over. Oh, sure, you might win the battle this time, but you won't win the war. They'll come back after you. You'll be sorry you didn't end this when you could have. Both men nodded at her like they had just been fussed at by their own mother. But Mary didn't seem to be convinced. She directed her attention at Brett and spoke again. You promise me, Agent. You look me in the eye and you promise me that you'll not second-guess yourself and just do what needs to be done. Your wife will never be safe if you don't. Brett seemed to think about that a second before replying. I promise, he assured her. She then turned her attention to DJ. And young man, you promise my daughter that you'll do whatever you need to do so you can come back to her. Mom, Abby cried. Well, I'm not stupid, dear. She redirected her attention back to a stunned DJ. Now you promise her. Right now, go on. You go and do it now. You two can figure out what's going on between you when you get this over with. But you have to make it out of this in one piece first, so go on. Look her in the eye and promise her. DJ looked at Abby. She was clearly embarrassed, but as he looked her in the eye, she seemed to stand taller and lift her chin slightly. I promise to come back. I promise to do what needs to be done, he told her. Abby stared at him a second, not moving. Then she simply nodded and said, Good. Without another word, she scooped up her laptop bag and turned to disappear into the restaurant. DJ stood there for a moment more, looking after her. They all did. Then DJ turned to Brett, and both men nodded to each other. They gave Miss Mary one more hug, then climbed into the Tahoe and drove away into the night.